Well, welcome to a new Teen CGC 9.8 video. Today I want to go through some $1,000 no-brainer 9.8 comics to invest in. And in this budget range, you'd absolutely expect to get like a great bread and butter kind of key issue. And what I've noticed about pretty much all the books on this list, they've doubled in value from their pre-pandemic prices. And yeah, you love to see that. And I think these books have a great combination of a positive long-term price history. They look great on the census. They're a tough 9.8, and you'd expect that for around $1,000. And they're just like an awesome big key issue as well. And that's a really good combination to have for some great 9.8 comics to consider investing in. So the first one up is an Amazing Spider-Man 252 in a 9.8. Yeah, this one is one I've really recommended kind of since the channel had started. And when I did start the channel, I think it was kind of early 2019. This one was about $400 or so, even a little bit less. I think you could have got one in a direct edition. Recent price, I saw one sell for $1,025 in the direct edition. Yeah, the newsstands are kicking around $1,500 or so. But you might even be able to do under 1,000 in this one. Yeah, kind of like, closer to 900 maybe might be worth aiming for on an Amazing Spider-Man 252. But you almost can't go wrong on this one. It's kind of like the poor man's Amazing Fantasy 15. You get the Amazing Fantasy 15 cover homage, and it's the first appearance of the black costume as well. So a lot to like about this one. Looks pretty great on the census. There's 1,673 9.8s in the universal blue label. Kind of seems like a lot, but this is like a huge key issue. If it wasn't as tough in a 9.8, there'd be like 3,000 or 4,000 of them. So kind of got to, have that context. But the 9.8 ratio is 8.2%. So of all the graded copies sent to CGC, only 8.2% get a 9.8. Which is pretty fantastic. When I got into things, this book was kind of in the sort of 13 to 14%. So it's a pretty heavily graded book, and not a lot of the books sent to CGC are getting the 9.8, which is great from a collector perspective. So yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 252 in a 9.8 is just an absolute no-brainer. Hopefully you get it a little under 1,000 too. This one during the pandemic was... like the directs were kind of 1,700 or so for most of the pandemic when things were really hot there. The newsstands were well over 2,000. So, this one's come down a little bit in price. But as I said, like these books have doubled since the pre-pandemic. Yeah, they were about 400, maybe even a little bit less when I first started the channel kind of thing. So this one's kind of got everything, a positive price history, has that Amazing Fantasy 15 tie into it, and you almost can't go wrong with anything related to Amazing Fantasy 15. So it's such a great one on ASM 252 in a 9.8. Okay, and the next one is kind of the only new modern book on the list. It's a Spawn number 174 in a 9.8. First appearance of the Gunslinger Spawn. Yeah, and this one, definitely the most popular version of Spawn, I think, is, or alternate version of Spawn, I guess, is the Gunslinger Spawn. I think time has shown that. Now they got, like, the Gunslinger Spawn comics, so he's got his own self-titled comic. So this one is just a great one, I think, in the price range for kind of new modern books that have come out after the year 2000. This one kind of sticks out for me. There's 387 in a 9.8 in the blue label. Yeah, so this one's a little bit more on the census about this generation of Spawn. It started to be really low printed. Like Spawn sold very well in the 90s. Getting toward this time, it wasn't selling as well certainly as in the 90s, like everything else. And Spawn books were pretty low printed during this time. So a 1 of 387 for the first appearance of Gunslinger Spawn is pretty awesome. Yeah, that's a great collector item. 45.8% is the 9.8 ratio. So not the best ratio, but it's just more about it's low printed. So Spawn 174, saw one sell for $900. I think, the market's kind of cooling down here. It's a pretty crappy market, I would say. You might be able to get this one, maybe 800, maybe if you're lucky, even kind of 750, hopefully. You might be able to get a better price than 900. But this one's really hung in there, and yeah, as I said, doubling since pre-pandemic prices. This one was like 350, 375 in 2019. Yeah, when I was kind of getting into things, I thought it was a pretty good underfollowed one back then. And yeah, even this one's kind of hanging in there during, with the pandemic and everything. I think this one, they might have got up to like 1,100 or 1,200 during the pandemic. So yeah, with a recent sale around 900, this one's kind of hanging in there from pandemic prices. But it's got a positive price history as well. Oh, there's some truck driving by. Sorry about that. Okay, so next one, it's a Punisher Limited Series #1. Yeah, this is my preferred limited series book, to be honest. When you compare it to kind of Wolverine Limited Series, Punisher Limited Series just looks a lot better on the census. There's 503 9/8 in a blue label. Whereas the Wolverine Limited Series, I'm pretty sure there's like 3,000. I think it might be over 3,000 in a 9/8. And 12.9% is the 9/8 ratio, 9.8 percentage for Punisher Limited Series #1. Whereas the Wolverine book, it might be under 20 now, but yeah, not nearly as good of a ratio as well. I saw a recent sale on Punisher Limited Series #1 for $789.07. And yeah, I think kicking during the pandemic when things were really hot, this one was like a little over 1,000. So it's, yeah, this is another one that's hanging in there. A really wanted book, a great collector item, looks good on the census. And yeah, pre-pandemic prices on this one were like 300 or so. So it's a solid double from kind of 2018 to 2019 prices. So yeah, absolutely a no-brainer if you're a Punisher fan. It's the first solo titled Punisher comic book, and pretty much like the 1980s Punisher book to get. So just a great one to consider, absolutely. Next one, talked about this one recently a couple times. DC Comics Presents #26. Yeah, it's the first appearance of the new Teen Titans. Raven, Starfire, and Cyborg get a lot of great hero first appearances on this one. And I think in a direct edition for this one, they're kind of in the 900 to, maybe kicking over a little over 1,000. So yeah, 900 to maybe 1,100, we'll call it, is sort of the price range on this one. I've saw a few selling in that range. Maybe things are kind of cooling down. You even get it a little under 900 possibly. But yeah, this is just a great DC key. A no-brainer DC key, certainly, from the early 1980s. On this one, there's 563 9.8s, a 1 of 563. Pretty great for all these big hero first appearances. And 12.3% is the 9/8 ratio, which is, not too bad for, this is a 1980 book, I believe, so we're getting pretty old. You'd maybe like to see a single-digit ratio on this one, but, still not too bad on the census. I think the newsstands are kind of kicking you, like I think I saw one go for kind of 1,700 or so not too long ago, and I thought that was a bit of an overpay. Like if the directs are around 1,000, I would think the newsstands would be 1,400. This is an early 80s book, so I don't think the newsstands get quite the premium that they do in the late 80s or the early 90s, so I'd probably aim under 1,500 for a newsstand, and hopefully under 1,000 for the direct edition of, yeah, just a great DC key issue. A no-brainer, absolutely. So the next one I do have, it's Incredible Hulk 340. Yeah, and Hulk 340 just has, and Todd McFarlane just has such a big cult of fans out there, and a lot of McFarlane fans. This one looks great on the census as well. It was one I really targeted when I got into collecting, just being a big McFarlane fan, remembering this cover. Oh, kitty. Oh, he's interested in this one now. And I do have 4 of them in a 9/8, because back then it was about $400, and it just struck me as it looks really good on the census as well, and clearly like it's kind of one of the 3 classic Todd McFarlane covers. I would say it's this one and like a Batman 423. And then like, Amazing Spider-Man 300, Amazing Spider-Man 316, you can kind of throw in there for sure. But a Hulk 340, I saw one recently sell for $1,326. I think you can aim probably a little bit lower than that. The market's kind of shabby right now. Hopefully you get it a little closer to maybe 1,100 if you get lucky. maybe even around 1,000. Maybe this one will cool down a little bit. But yeah, as I said, pre-pandemic, I bought all mine for around $400, so a solid double since for pre-pandemic prices. And yeah, there's 1,051 in a 9.8 in the blue label. That does kind of seem like a lot on the surface, but you know, McFarlane, whether you love him or hate him, he has a lot of fans. So you know, there's always going to be quite a few of them on the census. But a 10.3% is the 9.8 ratio, which this is a 1988 book. And the ratio is better than like a DC Comics Presents 26, which is from 1980, like early 80s, very early 80s. So yeah, for a late 80s book, it's got a great ratio, a good toughness in a 9.8, and you know, positive price history, huge key, huge cult following. So yeah, just kind of ticked all my boxes back then, and yeah, I'm really glad I grabbed them, you know, back then. So yeah, hopefully you get a little closer to 1,000 on a Hulk 340. Incredible Hulk 340. Next one's an X-Men 133. This is, you almost just can't go wrong with like a big Wolverine key. Wolverine's just so popular. I think Hulk 181 is like, you know, the Bronze Age book to get, and it's really kind of separated itself as far as like a positive price history over the long term, Hulk 181. So any kind of Wolverine related key is just a no-brainer pretty much. And this is the first solo Wolverine story, and you get a great, you know, classic Wolverine cover as well. So I saw one recently sell on this one. It was 1,000. Oh, sorry, there's like a truck doing something out here. $1,225 is a recent sale. You know, maybe things cool down a little bit, and the same deal, you get this one a little closer to 1,000 if you get lucky. But one did go for $1,225 in a direct edition. This one was newsstands, probably a little over 1,500 maybe. But on the census, 324 9.8s. One of 324 is awesome. Yeah, I feel like this might have just been one of those books that, you know, maybe initially people were like, this isn't a key issue, there's no first appearance, like I'm not going to take care of it. And yeah, it just seems that, you know, one of 324 is not a lot, which is pretty great for a collector item. Yeah, kind of a limited collector item. And a 10.5% is the 9.8 ratio. So pretty solid ratio, a 1 of 324. Yeah, I wish I had this one. I don't. Pretty close to pulling the trigger pre-pandemic, around like 500 they were during that time. So this one's a solid double as well from pre-pandemic prices. Yeah, just a lot to like about an X-Men 133, especially if you're a Wolverine fan. And yeah, like I said, just any kind of Wolverine key. Same, like, you know, Hulk 340 is kind of in that Wolverine key category. This is the second time Wolverine and Hulk fought in Hulk 340. The first time was in Hulk 181, the first appearance of Wolverine. But yeah, any just awesome Wolverine key is pretty much a no-brainer. Okay, and the last one is Transformers #1. Yeah, I kind of touched on this in the price video that we did yesterday. And one sold for $1,130. And they've been, you know, in the last 6 months or so, they've been kind of going in the 1,400 range, I want to say. So I think 1,130 is like a price to aim for that first print in Transformers #1. And it is a great 9.8. Yeah, you get a huge first appearance. There's 618 9.8s in a blue label, which for huge first appearance, that's not very much. And yeah, like I said, when compared to G.I. Joe, there's less of these. G.I. Joe #1. There's less of the Transformers #1. It's a better 9.8, the Transformers #1. That's why it's done better in pricing over time than a G.I. Joe one. And a 10.6% is the 9.8 ratio. So just a solid ratio on this one, big first appearance. And yeah, good price history too. I think, yeah, you remember pre-pandemic, I remember quite a few of these going in the kind of 550 range or so. So it's pretty much, you know, sitting on a double right now. And yeah, I think that 1,130 price was a really good price. I'll be interested to kind of watch this one in the next bit. Like, was that a really good price, and maybe it bounces back up to that 1,400 level again? I think that's a possibility with, I think this one just being a great 9.8 for Transformers fans for sure. So absolutely one to keep an eye on and consider Transformers #1 in the first print in a 9.8. Okay, just a solid short list here. I think, when you're spending $1,000, I think you notice here, like, the Spawn 174 is kind of a new modern book, but at 1,000, I think you want to pretty much be in the 1980s and just get like a really tough, no-brainer key issue, a tough 9.8, so it's a great collector item in the super high grade as well. Because yeah, for $1,000, it's a lot of money, right? So there's no need to like dabble or speculate on some modern comic or this and that maybe there's it doesn't have the best 9.8 ratio, or maybe it's not the biggest key, but you're just speculating that it could be. A lot of times you just, go with these no-brainer keys that are good 9.8s, have, they're huge keys that all these collectors are going to want, and they're going to sell quick for you when on the other end, whenever the time is when you want to sell. And you just get a great pride of ownership, especially if you kind of were born in the 80s and you grew up during this time. Yeah, all these are just pretty great books to like the pride of ownership is pretty much off the scale with all these. And yeah, there's a couple I still need. I don't have a Punisher Limited Series #1. I don't have a Spawn 174. No X-Men 133 either. So yeah, a couple of these I don't have. But yeah, I think great books around $1,000. Okay, we'll leave it at that though. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.